Welcome to the ServoyGuy Spell Check Pro tutorial. My name is Scott Butler and I'll be your host. In this tutorial we're going to go over the new Spell Check Pro plugin from ServoyGuy.com. Your first question is probably what's the difference between the Spell Check Pro plugin and the Spell Check plugin that ships with Servoy? Well, the first bullet point here is probably the biggest difference. With the spell check plugin from Servoy, it only allows you to spell check one element at a time. So if you're wanting to spell check multiple elements on a form, it gets a little clunky because the user gets a dialog for every single element that says that the spell check is complete. So that's a little bit clunky. But with this new Spell Check Pro plugin, you can actually specify as many elements as you want, and it'll go through and do them sequentially. So it's pretty easy to also basically say spell check all the elements on this form. The other difference is that this particular plugin will have multiple languages available. Currently I have a download that supports English, but I can also support Spanish, French, Italian, and German, as well as other languages upon request. So if you have any of those languages, or have a need for any of those languages, just send me an email and I'll get you a dictionary for that. The other nice feature is that it has a auto spell, which puts a little red squiggly line underneath the text with some right-click suggestions. So if you're unfamiliar with what I mean by that, I'll turn that on here in PowerPoint, and you can see that I get some red underlines here. I can right-click, and I can get some spelling suggestions. Basically, I've added this same functionality into the Servoy Spell Check Pro plugin. The other features that this supports is that you can specify whether or not it should be case sensitive or insensitive when doing the spell checking. This particular Java library is based on JOrtho, which is a SourceForge project. And the dictionaries for this are based on Wiktionary.com, which is basically like Wikipedia but as a dictionary. So there are many different languages out there that it supports. So let's go ahead and start up a quick demo. In this example, I'm going to take and add a spell checking feature to the Servoy sample CRM application. So let's go into Designer and let's go into that company's form, and I want to basically put a little button here that will do the spell checking for me. So we'll call it spell check. And we'll go to the on action, and we'll have it do a new method here called spell check. Now let's go into the editor and start coding that. So if I go down into my plugins, you can see I've got the ServoyGuy Spell Check Pro plugin installed that has 4 particular functions here, and they're all explained in the move sample. So if you do a move sample, you get a big chunk of code with 3 different examples on how to use the Spell Check Pro plugin. We're going to start with the second example. So let me clear out some of these. So in this second example, it basically will go through and show you an example of the auto spell feature, where it puts the red squiggly line underneath of the text and you get the right click functionality. So let's move this over and we'll walk through the code. So the first thing we do is we have to call the Register Spell Check Pro function. This takes in a language, and in this case I'm using the I18N to get the current language, and it takes in a true or false value as to whether or not I want the spell checking to be case sensitive. In this example I'm going to say false. And if success, that means that it was successfully able to find a library or a dictionary for that particular language. Then we'll go through and we'll say add to spell checker, and we'll specify the element that we want to add, and then there's 2 additional flags as to whether or not we want it to be in the pop-up. So do we want to add the right click functionality to it, and do we want to do the auto spell? So do we want to add the squigglies to it? And we're going to have to clear this out from the sample and actually put in a valid element. So let me go back to my forms. And this company form has a field FLD company notes. And I'm just going to click on one of these properties and I'll clear that out just so I get the element there. So we're going to pass in that entire element. And if it's not successful, we're just going to show an error message to the user that we were unable to load the dictionary for their particular language. So let's close this down and see it in action. So we're going to scroll over here and we're going to click Edit. And we're going to start typing. So you can see that I just typed in a misspelling there. I've got 3 L's in misspelling. And then I'm going to click on spell check. And you can see it finds that and underlines it. I can right click on it and I can get some suggestions. So I can say, yes, I actually meant misspelling, like that, and it automatically does that. The other nice thing is once I've added that to this particular element, it's there. So if I start misspelling something again, you can see it automatically continues to highlight it for me. I also get an option for if I have multiple different languages loaded into the plugin, I could switch my language if I wanted to. Now let's do a little bit more with this. So I'm going to come into Designer and let's go back into our method. We're going to clear that out. And let's go back to our plugin. Do a move sample again. This time we're going to work with example number 3. So walking through this code, again, we're going to register the spell check plugin with the language and whether or not we want it to be case sensitive. And this time we're going to make a call first that says clear elements from the pop-up spell checker. So if I've added previous elements into this thing, I don't want it to keep going through and spell check elements from other forms that I may have done in some other method. So before I go through and show this visual pop-up checker, I want to run this clear elements from pop-up spell checker. Then I'm going to go through and loop through all the elements on this particular form, and I'm going to add them to the spell checker. And I'm adding the pop-up property and the auto spell property. Then once I get done adding them, I'm going to show the pop-up spell checker by just calling the start spell check function. So now let's see that one in action. So I'll click Edit again. And let's type in a couple more misspellings. Alright, and we'll click our new spell check function. And it goes through and you can see I get the red underlines. And it starts working its way through here. So it sees that HTTP isn't capitalized. I can ignore that one once if I choose to. And it's moving on to the next field there. I'm going to ignore it. It's now worked its way over to my misspelling over here. If I want to ignore that, I can do that. It's found a misspelling in subsidiaries. So I'll go ahead and change that. And I'll ignore that just for fun. And when it's done, it says the spell check is complete. So you can see in this example, I had it work through multiple different elements on the same form. So it went through all the elements, and I was able to keep some misspellings here that I could use in the right-click functionality again if I wanted to. The other thing, let's go ahead and take a look at this method, and you'll notice that I loop through every single element. and I pass that into the spell checker. Well, you might be wondering, well, there's all different types of elements on there. There's tab panels, there's labels, there's all of those different things. Well, the plugin automatically filters so that it only puts the spell checking on text fields, text areas, and HTML areas. So you don't have to worry about accidentally passing in an element that it doesn't support. And that's the end of the SpellCheck Pro tutorial. If you have any questions, please see the contact page on ServoyGuy.com.